The 7900 XTX versus 2025. Hey, Mr. MCP76 here, and in this video, we're going to take a look at how the 7900 XTX has held up over the years since its original release date in December of 2022. Over the last few months, I've benchmarked AMD's flagship GPU, the Radeon RX 7900 XTX, against multiple games, both current AAA titles of 2025, 2024, and even older ones like Witcher 3. I think that's like a 10-year-old game, but it's a pretty tough game to run still. So how did the 7900 XTX hold up? Was AMD's flagship GPU able to give us playable frame rates at 4K max settings? What about 1440p max settings? Ray tracing, is the 7900 XTX holding up well against that, or is it suffering? We're going to go ahead and review these and see how the GPU has been performing over time. So let's stop wasting time and jump into some of the benchmark results. The first set of benchmarks we're going to look at here is at 4K and 1440p. We'll start off with 4K here. So as we can see here, the 7900 XTX has a mixed bag for results with the 4K at max settings and ray tracing off. We had three games here that gave us some really good performance. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is giving us 64 FPS average. Arc Raiders is 75 FPS average, and the big winner, Indiana Jones, the Great Circle, giving us 85 FPS average with 73 FPS for the 1% lows. Really good performer there. Again, this is just with 4K max settings and ray tracing off. A lot of these other games really did struggle. The Can It Run Crisis of our times, Cyberpunk 2077 coming in with just 38 FPS average. Black Myth Wukong, really tough one for the GPU here, coming in with the lowest FPS at 33 FPS average. Clear Obscure Expedition 33 coming in with 34 FPS average. So again, a mixed bag here. A handful of games that really shined, and then everything else kind of started falling behind from there. I would say, at this point with max settings, you could probably just roll back max settings like one step back, perhaps to like high, whatever is below max, right? And that should give you quite a bit of a bump in FPS, looking at anywhere from my experience, maybe 10, 15, even 20 FPS more. So some of these titles you can certainly get at or above 60 FPS average by simply rolling back the settings a bit. You can also enable FSR3 upscaling. If it's available in the game, it should give you, again, close to 60 or maybe even more 60 FPS in these titles. So not too bad of a showing here. The 7900 XTX, I wouldn't call it a 4K graphics card, but it can definitely work. It can definitely work if you're not pushing it too hard. Again, dial that setting back a bit, and you're certainly well within 60 FPS range on many, if not all games. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is 1440p max settings, ray tracing off. How did the 7900 XTX perform with this resolution? So if you're gaming at 1440p, you're going to see quite a better experience here. The games that we have tested here all came at or above 60 FPS. So really good performance. No upscaling needed. Again, max settings. So if you rolled that setting back just one option, you'd probably see all of these titles come out well above 60 FPS. Again, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle topping our list here at 141 FPS average and 110 FPS for the 1% lows. A really good performer here for that 2025 game. It is definitely, you'll see later in the charts here, that it's one of the tougher games to run, if not almost impossible to run once you enable ray tracing. But when it comes to just rasterization performance, the 7900 XTX just flies with this game. Behind that, not too far behind that, is the Witcher 3. Again, at 1440p, the 7900 XTX has no problems, giving us 109 FPS average and 93 FPS for the 1% low. So really high performance or high FPS refresh rates there. Really good performance there from the GPU. Next in line would be Cyberpunk 2077. Surprisingly, but again, this is with ray tracing turned off, so we're not asking too much of the game. And with ultra settings and 1440p, yeah, we're getting 89 FPS average, well over 60 FPS average, so really smooth gameplay there. So again, if you're gaming at 1440p, you've got some great FPS here. The 7900 XTX really holding strong, even with the latest games, like Clear Expedition 33 at 67 FPS average. And then Outer Worlds 2, the notorious Outer Worlds 2 that has such a hard time running, at 1440p, we're getting about 73 FPS average. All right, so now all the rosiness is gone. I think it's time to look at some real painful numbers. Now, we're going to be looking here first at 4K max settings, ray tracing on. So these titles are games that have ray tracing available to them, or with a couple of games, they're actually path tracing, and we'll see how those perform here. As you can see them, you can already see them down at the bottom there, not too well. But again, the 7900 XTX was never really touted for its ray tracing performance. It's easily trounced by the 40 series, RTX 40 series, RTX 50 series. Even AMD's RDNA 4 cards, the 9000 series, outperform this GPU with their ray tracing performance. The 7900 XTX just does not have the hardware and the machine learning or AI technology to get us really good FPS with ray tracing. But with that said, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Arc Raiders is the champion here, giving us 52 FPS average and 43 FPS for the 1% lows. Now, Arc Raiders, the implementation of ray tracing, I wouldn't call it game-changing, masterful, or really like realistic looking. It looks great, don't get me wrong. The game looks fantastic, and ray tracing really adds a lot to it. But it is not as a heavy implementation of ray tracing as it is in many other games. And that 52 FPS average with an online multiplayer game, with an extraction shooter online multiplayer game like Arc Raiders, you'll probably want higher FPS than what you're seeing here. And so, I'm sure most people will just turn ray tracing off. And as we saw in the previous slide, that gave us really good FPS with the ray tracing off. But with ray tracing on and max settings, we are under 60 FPS. Indiana Jones and Black Myth Wukong, unfortunately, Black Myth Wukong is literally unplayable unless you like playing a slideshow of a game. Indiana Jones comes in as a close second to a slideshow, where it's a little bit more playable, if you want to call it that. Those two games, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and Black Myth Wukong, are both implementing path tracing, or full ray tracing, as I think it's called in Indiana Jones, or Black Myth Wukong. Indiana Jones makes no fuss about it. It's labeled as path tracing, and it takes a significant beating with that. The 7900 XTX does not stand a chance with that, and I don't think any AMD card, RDNA 4 or RDNA 3, I don't think any of them can really hold up. And no, there's no upscaling method that will help you there. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 also suffered pretty badly with ray tracing on, but this was a online multiplayer test. I just wouldn't, you don't want to use ray tracing anyway. I mean, it's just going to really make it that much harder to see other characters, enemies on the screen. So this was just for testing purposes, kind of a ridiculous setting to use in such a game. But as we can see here, not very optimized. Ray tracing set to high on that one, and we only got 15 FPS average. Cyberpunk 2077, as expected, it did better than some of the other games. It is an older game now, so Indiana Jones and Black Myth Wukong certainly pummeled the 7900 XTX harder than Cyberpunk does, but it still gives it quite the thrashing at only 21 FPS average. Again, dialing back settings and using upscaling is recommended there. Witcher 3, a very old game. I think it's like 10 years old now at this point, something like that. But we see 30 FPS there in that game. We are using ray tracing. A recent update a few years ago provided ray tracing into the game. And with ray tracing enabled, we're only getting 30 FPS. It is a slow moving game, so 30 FPS average may just be fine for you. But if you want to get to 60, it's not too hard to do. Dial back the settings a little bit, turn off Geralt's Hairworks, dial back the settings from max to high, and enable upscaling, perhaps quality or balanced, and you'll be well over 60 FPS in that game. Overall, at 4K ray tracing on max settings, the 7900 XTX is not doing too well there. All right, but what if you're looking to play at 1440p and you want ray tracing? How do the games perform there? Well, here we've got 5 games that we tested with ray tracing on at 1440p and max settings, and we can see that it's performing quite interestingly. Very similar, actually, to the 4K chart we just saw. Only one game hitting or getting even close to 60 FPS, and that would be Witcher 3 at 58 FPS average and 44 FPS for the 1% lows. Again, Black Myth Wukong and Indiana Jones bringing up the bottom of the list there. Black Myth Wukong giving us 11 FPS average, and Indiana Jones giving us 16 FPS average. A little better than at 4K, but I definitely wouldn't call that playable. Then you got the other two games, Outer Worlds 2 and Cyberpunk 2077, both bringing in about 40 FPS average. Cyberpunk at 44 FPS average, and Outer Worlds 2 at 42 FPS average. These are slow moving games, so I would say this is actually not too bad. However, obviously 60 or more would be better. And again, rolling back the settings to perhaps high and using some upscaling here would help us. All right, so there you have it. A look at the 7900 XTX's performance over the last number of games that I've been able to test here for us. And as we can see here, again, the 7900 XTX, when it comes to 4K, native resolution, max settings, and no ray tracing, it's a very good performer. Dial the settings back maybe one notch from max to high, and you're going to get most games, if not all of them, that you play getting over 60 FPS average. 1440p, it's even a better story. The 7900 XTX is a strong 1440p graphics card. I don't see you having any issues getting to 60 FPS or more in any games you play, with ray tracing off, of course. Max settings, and then maybe dial that back a little if you want a little bit more FPS. When it came to ray tracing, the 7900 XTX, which isn't a surprise, right? I wouldn't say it's a surprise, is not giving us very good FPS. We're going to use some significant upscaling with that setting, with max settings and ray tracing. We're going to use some significant upscaling as well as dialing back settings to try to get us over that 60 FPS mark, both with 4K and even 1440p to some extent. All right, I hope you guys found this video interesting or informative. If you did like it, don't forget to give it a like down below, and also subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. And don't forget to check out the 7900 XTX Versus playlist below if you wanted to see a more in-depth look at how these games performed at the various settings we tested. So I'm Mr. MCP76. I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios!